The morning light streamed through the tall windows of Windsor Castle as King Charles III stood in his private study, reviewing the final draft of what would become one of his most meaningful Christmas addresses. The weight of tradition pressed upon his shoulders, but today carried something different, a deeper, more personal significance that few would immediately recognize. Sarah Mitchell, the King's private secretary, noticed the subtle changes in his demeanor as he prepared for the recording. Unlike previous years, Charles seemed to pause longer at certain passages, his fingers tracing the words with particular care. The Christmas address had always been a cornerstone of royal tradition, but this fourth address since his coronation would carry layers of meaning that only those closest to the royal family would fully understand. The inspiration for this year's message had come to Charles during a quiet moment in October, when he had watched Catherine, Princess of Wales, interact with children at a hospital visit. Despite her ongoing cancer treatment and the challenges she faced throughout 2024, Catherine had maintained a grace and strength that reminded Charles of his own mother's dedication to service. It was in that moment that he realized his Christmas message needed to honor not just the traditional themes of hope and service, but also the quiet courage of those who served despite personal struggles. Dr. Elizabeth Harrington, a constitutional historian who had studied royal communications for decades, would later note that the King's approach to this particular address represented a subtle but significant evolution in royal messaging. Where previous monarchs had maintained a more distant, formal tone, Charles was beginning to weave personal observations and gentle recognitions into the fabric of his public statements. The recording studio at Buckingham Palace had been prepared with meticulous care. The traditional Christmas tree stood in the background, its lights casting a warm glow that would provide the perfect backdrop for the King's message. But, today, there were subtle additions that most viewers would never notice. A small framed photograph positioned just out of camera range showed Catherine at a recent engagement, her smile radiating the kind of genuine warmth that had endeared her to the British public. As Charles settled into his chair, he reflected on the year that had passed. The royal family had faced unprecedented challenges, with Catherine's cancer diagnosis becoming public knowledge in March. The way she had handled her treatment, her gradual return to royal duties, and her unwavering commitment to her causes had demonstrated a strength that went beyond mere duty. It was courage personified, and Charles felt compelled to acknowledge this without breaking the careful protocols that governed royal communications. The King's speechwriter, James Fletcher, had worked closely with Charles to craft a message that would resonate with multiple audiences. The British public, still adjusting to their new monarch, needed reassurance and inspiration. The Commonwealth nations looked to the Crown for stability and continuity. But Charles also wanted to speak to families dealing with health challenges, to caregivers, and to those who continued to serve others despite their own difficulties. Fletcher later revealed that the King had been unusually specific about certain phrases and metaphors. Charles wanted to speak about quiet strength and grace under pressure without being too obvious about his intentions. The challenge was to create a message that would honor Catherine's journey while maintaining the dignity and universality that a royal Christmas address required. The technical team prepared their equipment as Charles reviewed his notes one final time. Director of photography Marcus Webb had worked with the royal family for 15 years, but he noticed something different in the King's preparation this year. There was an emotional depth that seemed to inform every gesture, every pause, every carefully chosen word. As the cameras began rolling, Charles spoke with a warmth that immediately set this address apart from his previous messages. His opening words, carefully crafted to acknowledge the challenges many families had faced throughout the year, carried a personal resonance that viewers could sense even if they couldn't quite identify its source. This year has reminded us all that strength comes in many forms, Charles began, his voice carrying a gentle authority that seemed to speak directly to each viewer. Sometimes the greatest courage is found not in grand gestures, but in the quiet determination to continue serving others, even when facing personal trials. The King's private thoughts during this opening passage were focused entirely on Catherine. He remembered visiting her in the hospital, seeing her maintain her characteristic grace even in the most challenging circumstances. He thought of her children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, and how she had protected them while managing her own recovery. Most of all, he thought of her quiet insistence on returning to her royal duties as soon as she was able, her commitment to the causes she championed never wavering despite her personal battles. Royal correspondent Victoria Sterling, watching from the press gallery, immediately recognized that something was different about this address. The King's usual formal cadence had been replaced by something more conversational, more personal. His references to families facing uncertainty and those who care for others while managing their own challenges seemed to carry weight beyond their surface meaning. As Charles continued his address, he spoke about the importance of supporting one another through difficult times. His words about the strength found in vulnerability and the grace that emerges from accepting help from others were crafted with surgical precision. Each phrase was designed to acknowledge Catherine's journey without explicitly naming her, creating a tribute that only those familiar with the royal family's recent experiences would fully appreciate. The king paused at one point, a moment of silence that seemed to carry emotional weight. During this pause, he was remembering a conversation with Catherine just weeks earlier, when she had expressed her gratitude for the privacy and space the family had been given during her treatment. She had spoken about feeling supported not just by her immediate family, but by the institution itself and the British people's understanding. In the control room, producer Amanda Roberts noted the unusual emotional quality of the king's delivery. She had produced dozens of royal broadcasts, but this one felt different. There was a personal investment in every word that suggested Charles was speaking from a place of deep feeling rather than mere obligation. The king's discussion of community support and the importance of caring for one another during times of crisis resonated particularly strongly. His words about finding hope in the dedication of those who put others first, even when facing their own challenges, seemed to speak directly to healthcare workers, caregivers, and anyone who had continued their service during difficult personal circumstances. Charles spoke about the royal family's visits to hospitals and care facilities throughout the year, highlighting the inspiring examples of resilience and grace they had encountered. Those familiar with the family's schedule would know that many of these visits had been undertaken by Catherine, both before and after her diagnosis, demonstrating her commitment to connecting with people facing health challenges similar to her own. The address continued with the king discussing the importance of hope and perseverance. His references to spring following winter and strength growing from adversity carried particular significance given Catherine's journey from diagnosis through treatment and recovery. Each metaphor had been carefully chosen to reflect not just universal truths about resilience, but specific aspects of the princess's experience. As the recording session progressed, those present began to recognize the careful artistry with which Charles was weaving his tribute. The speech acknowledged hardship without dwelling on it, celebrated strength without minimizing struggle, and honored service without demanding recognition. It was a masterclass in royal communication that managed to be both deeply personal and universally applicable. The king's closing thoughts for this first section of his address focused on the theme of quiet heroism, the idea that the most meaningful acts of courage often go unnoticed by the world at large. His words about those who face each day with determination and grace, inspiring others through their example, would later be recognized as a clear reference to Catherine's approach to her health challenges and royal duties. Charles concluded this opening portion of his address with a reflection on the true meaning of strength. His words about finding power in vulnerability and discovering grace under pressure set the tone for what would become one of his most memorable Christmas messages. The careful balance between personal recognition and universal application demonstrated the evolution of royal communication under his reign. As the cameras stopped rolling for a brief break, Charles allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. He had successfully begun what he knew would be a meaningful tribute to Catherine's courage and grace, while maintaining the dignity and broad appeal necessary for a royal Christmas address. The delicate balance between personal recognition and public service had been struck with precision. The production team prepared for the next segment, unaware that they were witnessing the creation of what would become a landmark moment in royal communications. Charles's gentle homage to Catherine was unfolding exactly as he had envisioned, subtle enough to maintain appropriate protocol, yet meaningful enough to honor the remarkable strength she had demonstrated throughout one of the most challenging years of her life. The second segment of King Charles's Christmas address began with a subtle shift in tone, as he moved from general reflections on strength to more specific observations about service and dedication. The king's communications team had worked extensively with him to ensure that this portion would seamlessly weave together themes of duty, family, and resilience in a way that would honor Catherine while speaking to the broader experiences of his subjects. Royal biographer Margaret Thornfield later noted that this section of the address demonstrated Charles's sophisticated understanding of symbolic communication. Every phrase was carefully calibrated to operate on multiple levels, allowing different audiences to find their own meaning while those familiar with the royal family's recent experiences could appreciate the deeper significance. Charles spoke about the importance of family support during difficult times, his words carrying particular weight as he reflected on how the royal family had rallied around Catherine during her treatment. "We have been reminded this year of how precious our loved ones are," he said, his voice carrying a warmth that spoke to personal experience. "The strength we find in family bonds, the comfort we discover in shared understanding, and the hope we draw from those who stand beside us in our darkest moments." The king's private thoughts during this passage were filled with images of family gatherings during Catherine's recovery. He remembered quiet dinners at Sandringham where conversation flowed naturally around Catherine's progress, her spirits lifted by the presence of her children and the support of extended family. These moments had reinforced Charles's understanding of how family unity could provide strength during crisis. Behind the scenes, palace officials had been carefully coordinating the visual elements of the address to complement the king's words. The traditional Christmas decorations were arranged with particular attention to symbols of hope and renewal. Fresh flowers, carefully chosen for their significance, added subtle layers of meaning that would support the king's verbal tribute to Catherine's journey. As Charles continued, he spoke about the role of public service in providing purpose during personal challenges. His words about finding meaning through service to others, even when facing our own trials, were crafted specifically to acknowledge Catherine's decision to continue her royal engagements throughout her treatment. The princess had made it clear that her royal duties provided her with strength and purpose, rather than additional burden. Dr. Robert Harrison, a specialist in royal protocol who had advised 3 generations of the royal family, recognized the unprecedented nature of what Charles was attempting. Traditional royal Christmas addresses maintained careful emotional distance, focusing on general themes rather than personal experiences. Charles was pushing these boundaries while still respecting the fundamental constraints of royal communication. The king's discussion of healthcare workers and their dedication carried special significance, as he spoke about those who care for others while managing their own challenges. Catherine had become an advocate for healthcare professionals during her treatment, inspired by the dedication of her own medical team. Charles's words honored both the medical professionals who had supported his daughter-in-law and others like them throughout the healthcare system. Palace insider Jennifer Walsh later revealed that Charles had insisted on including specific references to cancer research and support. His words about the brave souls who advance medical knowledge and those who provide comfort during times of uncertainty were deliberately chosen to acknowledge the institutions and individuals who had played crucial roles in Catherine's care. The address continued with Charles reflecting on the importance of hope and determination. His metaphor of seasons changing, bringing renewal after the harshest winter, was crafted with Catherine's journey specifically in mind. Her diagnosis had come at a time when spring was arriving, and her recovery had progressed throughout the summer and autumn months, making the seasonal metaphor particularly apparent. Royal communications expert Dr. Sarah Davidson noted that Charles's use of natural imagery throughout this section served multiple purposes. The references to growth, renewal, and seasonal change provided comfort to anyone facing health challenges while specifically honoring Catherine's progression from diagnosis through treatment to recovery. As the king spoke about the power of positive thinking and maintaining hope during adversity, his words carried the weight of personal observation. He had witnessed Catherine's determination to focus on recovery rather than dwelling on diagnosis, her commitment to maintaining normalcy for her children, and her insistence on looking forward rather than backward. The technical crew noticed that Charles seemed to invest particular emotional energy in passages about courage and grace. His delivery during these moments carried a depth of feeling that suggested personal experience rather than scripted sentiment. Director Marcus Webb later described these moments as genuine emotional peaks in what was already a deeply felt address. Charles's discussion of community support highlighted the role that institutions could play in supporting individuals during crisis. His words about finding strength in the knowledge that others stand ready to help reflected the royal family's experience of receiving support from both official institutions and the general public during Catherine's treatment. The king's observations about the importance of privacy and space during healing carried particular significance. His words about respecting the dignity of those facing health challenges and allowing space for recovery while maintaining connection reflected the careful balance the royal family had maintained throughout Catherine's treatment. Palace Communications Director Helen Richardson had worked closely with Charles to ensure that this section would acknowledge the public's respectful response to Catherine's situation. The British people had largely honored the family's request for privacy while offering support and encouragement. Charles wanted to recognize this collective display of consideration and kindness. As Charles spoke about the strength found in vulnerability, his words reflected conversations he had had with Catherine about her decision to make her diagnosis public. Her choice to share her experience had been motivated by a desire to help others facing similar challenges, demonstrating how personal struggles could be transformed into sources of strength for others. The king's reflections on the importance of taking time to heal resonated with anyone who had faced health challenges or supported someone through illness. His words about honoring the pace of recovery and finding strength and rest acknowledged the reality that healing requires both time and patience. Charles concluded this section with thoughts about the transformative power of facing adversity with grace. His words about discovering inner resources we didn't know we possessed and finding new depths of appreciation for life's gifts spoke directly to Catherine's experience while offering hope to others facing similar challenges. The production team prepared for the final segments of the address, recognizing that they were witnessing something unprecedented in royal communication. Charles had managed to create a deeply personal tribute while maintaining the dignity and broad appeal necessary for a Christmas address to the nation and Commonwealth. As cameras paused between segments, Charles allowed himself a moment to reflect on what he had accomplished thus far. The careful balance between personal tribute and public service was being maintained exactly as he had hoped. His gentle homage to Catherine was unfolding with the precision and dignity appropriate for such a significant communication. Royal correspondents in the press gallery were beginning to recognize the sophisticated nature of what Charles was creating. His ability to speak about personal experience while addressing universal themes demonstrated an evolution in royal communication that honored both tradition and contemporary relevance. The king's private satisfaction with the recording thus far was evident in his relaxed demeanor during the break. He had successfully navigated the delicate task of honoring Catherine's courage while maintaining the appropriate tone for a royal Christmas address. The foundation had been laid for the concluding segments that would complete his gentle tribute to the princess's remarkable strength and grace. The third section of King Charles's Christmas address marked a significant deepening of his tribute to Catherine, as he moved into more complex themes of leadership, inspiration, and the quiet heroism found in everyday courage. Palace historians would later recognize this portion as representing a masterful blend of personal observation and universal wisdom, demonstrating Charles's growing confidence as both monarch and communicator. The king's words about those who lead by example rather than proclamation carried profound significance for anyone familiar with Catherine's approach to her royal duties. Throughout her years as a working member of the royal family, and especially during her health challenges, she had consistently demonstrated leadership through action rather than rhetoric, influence through authenticity rather than authority. Charles reflected on his observations of Catherine during various royal engagements, particularly those focused on early childhood development and mental health awareness. Her ability to connect genuinely with people from all backgrounds had impressed him repeatedly, but it was her continued commitment to these causes during her treatment that had truly demonstrated her character. Dr. Emma Watson, a specialist in royal communications who had studied the monarchy for over 2 decades, noted that Charles's approach in this section represented a sophisticated understanding of how personal testimony could enhance rather than compromise royal messaging. By drawing on genuine observations without explicit identification, he was able to offer both tribute and inspiration. The king spoke about the importance of authenticity in leadership, his words carefully chosen to honor Catherine's natural approach to her royal role. True leadership emerges not from titles or positions, he observed, but from the genuine care we show for others and the consistency between our private character and our public service. Behind the scenes, palace staff had noticed the king's particular attention to passages about maternal strength and the unique challenges faced by mothers in public roles. Charles had witnessed firsthand Catherine's skill in balancing her responsibilities as a mother with her royal duties, particularly during her treatment when protecting her children's normalcy had been paramount. The address continued with Charles discussing the ripple effects of individual courage on family and community. His words about how one person's strength can inspire entire families to face their own challenges with greater confidence reflected his observations of how Catherine's approach to her diagnosis had influenced not just her immediate family, but countless others facing similar situations. Royal insider Patricia Morrison later revealed that Charles had been deeply moved by letters from families who had drawn inspiration from Catherine's openness about her cancer journey. Parents facing their own health challenges had written about finding courage in the princess's example, while children dealing with sick parents had found comfort in seeing how Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis continued their normal activities. The king's discussion of the balance between public duty and private healing carried particular weight as he reflected on the careful decisions the family had made throughout Catherine's treatment. His words about knowing when to step back without stepping away and maintaining connection while honoring the need for space spoke directly to the delicate balance Catherine had maintained. Charles spoke with evident admiration about people who used their own experiences to help others facing similar challenges. His words about transforming personal trials into sources of strength for others clearly referenced Catherine's decision to share her diagnosis publicly, motivated by a desire to encourage early detection and remove stigma from cancer discussions. The technical crew noticed that the king's delivery during this section carried a particular intensity of feeling. His pauses seemed more deliberate, his gestures more purposeful, and his tone more personally invested. These were not the words of a monarch fulfilling a traditional obligation, but of a father-in-law honoring someone he deeply respected. Palace communications expert Sarah Fletcher observed that Charles was accomplishing something unprecedented in royal messaging. He was managing to celebrate individual courage while speaking to universal experiences, honoring personal sacrifice while maintaining appropriate protocol, and offering intimate recognition within the framework of public communication. The king's reflections on the importance of hope during uncertainty resonated with particular power as he drew on his observations of Catherine's approach to her treatment. Her insistence on focusing on positive outcomes rather than dwelling on risks had impressed Charles and provided him with insights into the nature of constructive optimism. Charles spoke about the strength found in accepting support from others, his words reflecting Catherine's graceful acceptance of help from family, medical professionals, and staff during her recovery. Her ability to receive assistance while maintaining her independence had demonstrated a maturity that Charles found admirable and instructive. The address included thoughtful observations about the nature of healing and recovery. Charles's words about honoring the body's wisdom while maintaining the spirit's strength reflected conversations with Catherine about her treatment approach, her commitment to following medical advice while maintaining her emotional resilience. Dr. Michael Thompson, a royal biographer who had chronicled the modern monarchy for decades, recognized that Charles was creating a new template for royal communication. The integration of personal observation with public service represented an evolution that honored both individual experience and collective responsibility. As Charles discussed the importance of maintaining perspective during crisis, his words carried the weight of personal observation. He had watched Catherine navigate the initial shock of diagnosis, the challenges of treatment, and the gradual process of recovery with a grace that had impressed everyone around her. The king's thoughts about the role of family in providing strength during adversity reflected his own experience of watching William, George, Charlotte, and Louis rally around Catherine. The way the family had maintained its unity while respecting individual needs had demonstrated principles that Charles felt were worth sharing with his subjects. Charles spoke about the importance of continuing to serve others even while facing personal challenges. His words about finding purpose through service and discovering that helping others can aid our own healing reflected Catherine's insistence on maintaining her royal engagements whenever possible during her treatment. The address continued with the king discussing the transformative power of facing adversity with dignity. His observations about how grace under pressure can inspire others to find their own strength spoke directly to the impact Catherine's approach had had on her family and the broader public. Palace staff noted that Charles seemed particularly invested in passages about the strength found in motherhood. His words about the fierce protection and gentle guidance that mothers provide and the unique courage required to be strong for others while managing personal challenges clearly honored Catherine's role as a mother during one of the most difficult periods of her life. As this section of the address drew to a close, Charles reflected on the power of quiet example. His words about those who inspire not through grand gestures but through consistent grace perfectly captured his assessment of Catherine's approach to both her royal duties and her personal challenges. The king's concluding thoughts for this section focused on the lasting impact of individual courage on families and communities. His observation that one person's strength can create circles of resilience that extend far beyond immediate family reflected his understanding of how Catherine's journey had inspired countless others facing similar challenges. Production staff prepared for the final segment of the address, recognizing that they had witnessed an unprecedented blending of personal tribute and public service. Charles had successfully honored Catherine's courage while maintaining the dignity and broad appeal necessary for a royal Christmas message. As cameras paused, Charles felt a deep satisfaction with what he had accomplished. His gentle homage to Catherine was proceeding exactly as planned, balancing personal recognition with universal application, individual tribute with collective inspiration. The foundation was now firmly in place for the concluding segment that would complete his carefully crafted recognition of Catherine's remarkable strength and grace during one of the most challenging years of her life. The final segment of King Charles's fourth Christmas address represented the culmination of his carefully orchestrated tribute to Catherine, Princess of Wales. As the cameras rolled for the concluding portion, Charles felt the weight of completing what had become both a personal mission and a significant moment in royal communications history. The king began this section with reflections on the nature of true nobility, his words carefully chosen to honor Catherine's character while speaking to universal principles of human dignity. The greatest nobility, he observed, is found not in titles or ceremonial roles, but in how we respond to life's greatest challenges with grace, courage, and concern for others. Charles's private thoughts during these opening moments were filled with specific memories of Catherine's behavior throughout her treatment. He remembered her insistence on attending family gatherings when possible, her determination to maintain normal routines for her children, and her graceful handling of the public attention surrounding her diagnosis and recovery. Royal historian Professor David Ashworth later identified this concluding segment as a masterpiece of symbolic communication. Charles had managed to create what amounted to a love letter to Catherine's strength while maintaining the dignity and universal appeal required for a royal Christmas address to millions of viewers worldwide. The king's discussion of renewal and hope carried particular significance as he reflected on Catherine's journey from diagnosis through treatment to recovery. His words about the promise that difficult seasons will pass and the certainty that strength grows through adversity spoke directly to her experience while offering encouragement to anyone facing similar challenges. Palace insider Rebecca Chen revealed that Charles had been particularly moved by Catherine's return to royal duties in the autumn. Her gradual resumption of engagements, carefully balanced with continued recovery needs, had demonstrated a wisdom about pacing and priorities that impressed everyone around her. As Charles spoke about the importance of celebrating quiet victories, his words carried deep personal meaning. He had witnessed Catherine's small daily triumphs throughout her treatment, successful medical appointments, energy for family activities, moments of normal life maintained despite extraordinary circumstances. These private victories had been as significant as any public achievement. The king's observations about the strength found in vulnerability reflected conversations he had had with Catherine about her decision to share her diagnosis publicly. Her choice to be open about her experience had required tremendous courage but had ultimately created opportunities to help others facing similar situations. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, who had studied royal communications for decades, noted that Charles's ability to speak about profound personal experiences while maintaining appropriate protocol represented a new level of sophistication in royal messaging. He was honoring individual courage while addressing universal human experiences. Charles spoke with evident emotion about the power of family love to sustain us through our darkest moments. His words about the strength we find in knowing we are loved unconditionally and the courage that comes from being surrounded by those who believe in our ability to overcome reflected his observations of the support Catherine had received from William and their children. The address continued with the king discussing the importance of hope and forward-looking perspective during times of crisis. His words about choosing to focus on possibilities rather than limitations and finding light in the midst of uncertainty spoke directly to Catherine's approach to her treatment and recovery. Behind the scenes, production staff noted the unusual emotional intensity with which Charles delivered these concluding passages. His voice carried a depth of feeling that suggested personal investment far beyond the typical royal obligation to deliver an annual Christmas message to the nation. The king's reflections on the nature of healing encompassed both physical and emotional dimensions. His words about allowing time for complete restoration and honoring the pace of recovery while maintaining hope for the future reflected Catherine's balanced approach to her treatment and gradual return to full activities. Charles spoke about the transformative power of facing adversity with the support of loved ones. His observations about how shared strength multiplies individual courage and the way family unity can transform challenge into opportunity for growth clearly drew from his observations of how the royal family had rallied around Catherine. Palace Communications Director Helen Richardson later revealed that Charles had insisted on including specific acknowledgement of the public's respectful response to Catherine's situation. His words about the kindness of those who offer support while respecting privacy honored the British people's largely thoughtful approach to the family's request for space during treatment. The king's discussion of service and purpose during personal trials carried particular weight as he reflected on Catherine's continued commitment to her royal duties throughout her treatment. Her insistence on maintaining her patronages and gradually resuming engagements had demonstrated how public service could provide strength and meaning during difficult times. As Charles spoke about the importance of gratitude in times of recovery, his words reflected Catherine's own expressions of appreciation for her medical team, family support, and public understanding. Her gracious acknowledgement of all who had contributed to her healing had impressed Charles with its genuine warmth and comprehensive recognition. The address moved toward its conclusion with the king's thoughts about the lasting impact of individual courage on families and communities. His words about how one person's strength can create ripples of inspiration that extend far beyond immediate circles spoke to the influence Catherine's journey had had on countless others facing health challenges. Charles's reflections on the nature of true leadership during crisis honored Catherine's consistent demonstration of grace under pressure. His words about leading through example rather than words and inspiring others through authentic response to challenge perfectly captured his assessment of her approach to both her personal situation and her public role. The king spoke with particular warmth about the role of mothers in providing stability during family crises. His words about the unique courage required to be strong for others while managing personal challenges and the fierce love that motivates mothers to protect their children's sense of security clearly honored Catherine's handling of her situation as a mother. As the address approached its final moments, Charles reflected on the themes of renewal and hope that had run throughout his message. His words about the certainty that spring follows winter and the promise that strength grows through adversity provided both completion to his tribute and encouragement for all viewers facing their own challenges. The king's concluding thoughts focused on the power of love and family to sustain us through life's greatest trials. His words about finding strength in the knowledge that we are cherished and drawing courage from the love that surrounds us spoke to universal human experiences while honoring the specific support Catherine had received throughout her journey. Charles ended his address with a reflection on the Christmas message of hope and renewal, connecting the religious significance of the season with the personal experiences of growth and healing that had shaped his year. His words about the light that shines in darkness and the hope that sustains us through our longest nights provided a fitting conclusion to both his Christmas message and his gentle tribute to Catherine. As the cameras stopped rolling, Charles felt a profound sense of completion. He had successfully accomplished what many would have considered impossible, creating a deeply personal tribute to Catherine's courage while maintaining the dignity, protocol, and broad appeal necessary for a royal Christmas address. Palace staff recognized immediately that they had witnessed something unprecedented in royal communications. Charles had managed to honor individual courage while speaking to universal experiences, celebrating personal strength while maintaining appropriate boundaries, and offering intimate recognition within the framework of public service. Royal correspondents who had covered the monarchy for decades understood that this address represented a new chapter in royal communication. Charles had demonstrated that it was possible to speak from the heart while honoring tradition, to recognize personal experience while addressing collective concerns, and to celebrate individual courage while inspiring universal hope. The king's gentle homage to Catherine had been completed with the precision and dignity he had envisioned. His fourth Christmas address would be remembered not only for its sophisticated blend of personal and public themes, but for its demonstration that royal communication could evolve while maintaining its essential character. As Charles prepared to leave the studio, he reflected on what he had accomplished. His tribute to Catherine's strength, grace, and courage had been woven seamlessly into a message that would resonate with millions of viewers while honoring one remarkable woman's journey through one of life's greatest challenges. The gentle royal homage was complete, a testament to both Catherine's extraordinary character and Charles's own growth as a communicator and monarch.